Under the Content menu, we'll see the other big change that's come about in Joomla 1.6. Section Manager is gone. Joomla 1.6 now allows you to have almost unlimited nested categories. And this is really good news. If you've used K2 at all to create blogs or articles, K2 has done this now for a while. It got rid of the Section Manager, and so Joomla 1.6 followed suit, giving us a lot more flexibility in how we set up our websites. If I click on Article Manager, we'll see the same kinds of buttons and the same kind of articles. The front page articles are now called Featured Articles. You'll see here the submenu, Articles, Categories, and Featured Articles. Again, just like the menu, so you're not always having to go back up here to the menu items. This is really helpful. I can filter by state, by category, by access, author, and language. And very briefly, what language is going to allow us to do is to have content items that are in a different language than our main site language without having to go to the extent of installing Joomfish. Now, this isn't replacing Joomfish. This is just for individual articles that may be in a different language, and you have to install the language for that. But this is going to be really, really helpful for a few articles on your site that need to be translated. One other way to filter your articles that's actually new in Joomla 1.6 is the ID filter. Now, we all know that we can filter by title. Type in ID : and the number of the article, hit enter, and that article will come straight up. If you know your article IDs, that's going to be really helpful. The other big change in the Article Manager is the trash bin. If I trash an article, the article is now gone, but there's no empty trash container up here in the main menu anymore. To empty the trash, I have to select the trash from the drop-down. Gives me my list, and then I can empty trash. Once again, once you empty the trash, it's gone forever. I can, of course, restore this just by clicking on the Publish button. When we look at the Edit window for articles, there are some really neat changes here as well. Title, alias, categories, all in their nested indented styles. What access this article has, and again, now that we've got great access level control, we can control right down to the user even access to this article. If I click on Set Permissions, again, this is down to our ACL. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. All of these permissions are inherited, where the public cannot delete, edit, or edit the state, but of course the manager can, and of course administrator can. An author cannot. An editor is allowed to edit, and a publisher can edit and edit the state. Super users, of course, can do anything. Over here on the right, we have created by, and we now have a select user modal pop-up that allows me to select the user that actually created this article. I can change the alias, of course, and the create date, publishing, and finish publishing date. Article options are pretty much the same. Article parameters are now called article options. And as before, I can add metadata to the individual article. Categories, as I mentioned before, is one of the other major changes in Joomla 1.6. And as you can see here, nested categories give you the opportunity to really refine how your articles are brought to your website. You're no longer restricted to just sections and categories. However, you are still restricted in that an article can only belong to one category. Creating a new category is pretty simple. Board members, I could give it a parent, put it in any category I wanted. Is it published? Is it public? In this case, it's going to be confidential, and I'll share with you a little bit later how that works. And I can select a user. Basic options here. I can add a note to help me remember what I've done later on. I can now have metadata for categories, again really helpful for SEO, and I can change my category permissions right here. Now for this category, for instance, I want the board to be able to create and edit their own articles inside the board member category. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we do ACL. Save and close. And now if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I have board minutes and board members. Now if I wanted to do this justice, I would probably put a board category and put both of these as subcategories of the board category so I could do a nice category blog layout. One last thing to show you here. I'm just going to select these two, and I'm going to change the access level from confidential to public just by clicking. This is really helpful if you want to change multiple categories very quickly. Just another nice little feature in Joomla 1.6. One thing to note, because the categories are in a nested table, there is a possibility that they may get quote-unquote messed up. If you find that, click the Rebuild button, and Joomla 1.6 will try and rebuild your categories from scratch. Now, take care. If you have 1,000 categories, this is going to take a while, and the front page of your website could be pretty messed up for a few moments. My recommendation is if you need to rebuild the categories, take your site offline for just a few moments and do it that way. Lastly, front page articles are now called featured articles. Pretty easy here. If something's featured, it's going to be listed here. If I'm in my article window and I want it to be featured, of course I can just click on featured. If I go to the front page of my website, you'll notice now it's page 1 of 2, and there's the authentication article. Media Manager has been moved under Content, and that makes a lot of sense. And finally, in 1.6, the Flash Uploader actually works. You can set that up by clicking on Options. Here are all the legal extensions, the maximum size. Again, this is pretty familiar from Joomla 1.5. Permissions, something new here. Who can upload, who can access the Media Manager, and Flash Uploader, as I mentioned, actually works in Joomla 1.6. We can browse files, and you'll notice that as soon as I've browsed a file, click Start Upload, and it gives us a nice little overall progress bar. You can add multiple images to the Upload Files window, so that's the Media Manager. Components are pretty much the same. We're not going to spend a lot of time on those. The one thing that is new in components is, again, permissions. You can globally set the permissions for your components, and then you can individually set permissions for your components. So a manager may have access to all of the components except this one. And when it's denied, then the manager is no longer able to access the banner component. Even though these say inherited, one deny means that he's denied across the board. And we can leave it at that. So if I logged in as a manager, then banners would not be available to me. We'll talk more about that in our ACL video. Extension Manager has been completely updated, and there's some great new features here. This looks the same, but one of the things that's really different, developers will now be able to put all of their components, modules, plugins into one zip package with an XML document, and that you'll be able to upload one zip file, and Joomla will install all of the different components, modules, and plugins that the developer has. Yeah, there are some extensions that do this already. Joomla 1.6 has that as a built-in feature that developers will be able to take advantage of. Update is a fantastic new feature. Of course, there are no updates available at this moment, but one of the things that Joomla is doing is hooking into third-party developer update sites, and when a new update is available, you should be informed here. And just by clicking the Update button, you'll be able to update your third-party extension. That's a fantastic new feature. This only applies to third-party extensions. The Joomla core will still need to be updated manually or using that fantastic administration software from the guys who do a Kiba backup. Next tab under Extension Manager, of course, is Manage. And this is the old uninstall extension window. We can hide protected extensions, which will give us a much better view of what can be and cannot be uninstalled. We can select location, whether they're site administrator, disabled or enabled, what kind of extension they are, and what folder they're in. And so, pretty similar here. If I want to get rid of any of these extensions, I can just click on one and click uninstall or disable. Discover, if I have a temp folder with a bunch of extensions in there and I've forgotten to install it for some reason, this screen allows me to find the extensions that I maybe uploaded but I never did install. And then finally, any warnings that my Joomla site may be giving to me. For instance, this one, the PHP temp directory is not set. As it says here, it's not always a problem, but should be fixed. So that's our extension manager. From there, module, plugin, template, and language manager. Module manager has been completely rewritten, and this is really exciting. This is one of the other big changes to Joomla 1.6. We have site and administrator modules, of course. Select state, whether they're published, unpublished, or trash, and the trash works exactly the same way as articles do. I can filter by position, by type, as before, by access level, and language. And again, I can assign modules to a particular kind of access. Taking a look at the article categories module, we'll see some really great changes. Title, show title, what position, same as before. Published, access, start publishing, finishing publishing. Oh, how many times have we wished for this? And so now it has the power of articles. If we want to add a note to why this particular module is the way it is, this particular module is the article category module, so of course it has those options. And then, what menu assignment does it have? This is absolutely fantastic. It's been completely rewritten. Let's take a look. If we just look at the user menu, I can now take this and say on all pages, on no pages, of course, only the pages selected, or on all pages except those selected. Again, how many times have we wished for that? Every time you created a module that wasn't on all pages, of course, in 1.5, and you had to update that, every time you added a new menu, you had to go back into all your modules and add it. Now, it's on all the pages except those selected. Toggle selection, and now they're not there at all. Really powerful, really exciting. Plugins haven't really changed that much, so we're just going to glance over those. Template Manager is, again, completely rewritten. There's going to be a lot of talk about the new template styles and new template management in Joomla 1.6, but basically you have two options, styles and templates. Templates, where we can actually click on a template and edit all of the files. Main page template, print view template, and all of the CSS. That's been moved over to this Template Manager customizing template section. And now with template overrides from 1.5, now you can have template styles. And so you don't have to actually make copies of your templates to have different styles. Notice Bees 5, Bees 20, and Bees 20, Bees 2 Parksite and Bees 2 Default are still the same template, only with different styles applied. The Bees 2 Parksite has a different header and a slightly different layout, and is only assigned to these menu items. It has a different site description and a different site title and a different color. That's still the same Bees template, only it's now got a new style. This is going to be really handy. There are going to be a lot more tutorials on this, and so for now, that's just a brief overview. Language Manager is what I mentioned earlier. You can actually have articles translated to different languages if you have some of those installed. And again, there's going to be a lot of talk about this particular option for multilingual sites. I don't do too many of those, and so we'll leave that for someone else to talk about. And then help. Help is actually helpful now. You have built-in articles and links to all of the main Joomla websites, including the wiki and the support forum. Well, that gives us our overview of Joomla 1.6. Watch the next couple of videos. We're going to talk much more in depth about access control, category management, and module management.